Did you ever use an Intel? If you know even a little bit about the gaming world or just computers and electronics in general, Intel is surely a name you'll recognize instantly. For years, this brand has been responsible for producing the CPUs used by countless PCs today. And well, CPUs are like the brain of a computer, arguably its most important part. That's why, for decades, they were the go-to choice for most users when it came to processors. But have you ever wondered how it all started for Intel? Today we see them as this giant found in almost every computer, yet their origins were much humbler and quite curious. However, due to a long list of poor decisions, they slowly began to drift away from being the top choice for many. And that's exactly why we're here. Intel was founded in 1968 when two engineers, Robert Noyce and Gordon Moore, decided to start a company in California. They weren't just any duo. Noyce had been one of the inventors of the integrated circuit, and Moore was already famous for his Moore's Law, that prediction that chips would double their power every so often. From the very beginning, Intel wasn't just another Silicon Valley company. It was a project with a vision for the future. Interestingly, the name Intel comes from integrated electronics, though many thought it stood for intelligence. From that small office with funding from venture capital pioneer Arthur Rock, they began working on something that would change computing forever: microprocessors. In 1971, they launched the Intel 4004, the world's first commercial microprocessor. Imagine that. A single chip that could perform calculations which previously required massive machines. That tiny component opened the door for computers to become more accessible and compact. And while it seemed like just another laboratory invention at first, it soon became the foundation of an entire industry. The real opportunity came when IBM chose Intel to manufacture the processor for their personal computer. That was the famous Intel 8086, and with it, the popularization of the x86 architecture began, a standard that remains the baseline for most PCs today. It was as if, suddenly, Intel went from being a small player in California to becoming the heart of millions of machines worldwide. Throughout the 80s, Intel continued to scale with models like the 8286 and the 386, each faster and more powerful than the last. Curiously, they weren't just selling chips, they were selling trust. Companies began to realize that if your computer had an Intel processor, it was a synonym of quality. That reputation was key to the brand's explosion. Then came the 90s and a moment many remember: the Pentium. That name became an almost cultural symbol. It wasn't just a processor, it was the brand that appeared in commercials, on laptop stickers, and in TV ads. Intel Inside became a seal of approval, a guarantee that your computer was equipped with the best. That was when Intel stopped being just a chip manufacturer and transformed into a household name. It's fascinating how the company went from a small lab in California to dominating the global market in just 2 decades. All thanks to constant innovation, strong alliances, and the ability to turn a technical product into something everyday people recognized and valued. After the success of the Pentium and the consolidation of the Core series in the 2000s, it seemed Intel's future was secured. It was the processor everyone wanted, the badge of performance and prestige. But as often happens in technology, absolute leadership never lasts forever. One of Intel's first major stumbles was its inability to enter the mobile market. While the world was filling up with smartphones and tablets, Intel bet on its Atom processors, which never managed to compete with the efficiency of ARM chips. Apple, Samsung, and Qualcomm dominated that space, and Intel's absence from mobile was a strategic error that is still remembered today. At the same time, the competition with AMD began to intensify. For years, Intel had maintained the upper hand, but AMD returned with a vengeance thanks to its Ryzen architecture, offering more cores and better performance at competitive prices. Suddenly, consumers started seeing AMD as a real alternative, and that hit Intel's image as the undisputed leader. But the problems didn't stop there.
Intel suffered massive delays in transitioning to more advanced manufacturing processes. While rivals like TSMC and Samsung were successfully producing 7nm chips and smaller, Intel stayed stuck on 10 nanometers for years. That delay was devastating. It didn't just hurt their competitiveness, it gave AMD time to gain ground and Nvidia the space to solidify itself in the AI market. Furthermore, security vulnerabilities like Meltdown and Spectre appeared directly affecting their processor architecture. Although Intel released patches and fixes, the blow to public trust was heavy. For the first time, people began to question the security of the chips that dominated the market. Financially, things got complicated too. Intel went from reporting solid profits to facing multi-million-dollar losses. In 2024, for example, it recorded a net loss of $1.6 billion, forcing the company to announce massive layoffs of over 15,000 employees, nearly 15% of their workforce. These measures reflected that the Blue Giant was in crisis and needed to restructure to survive. The new CEO, Pat Gelsinger, attempted a turnaround with a strategy focused on 3 pillars: regaining competitiveness in x86 architecture, betting big on artificial intelligence, and strengthening its foundry business, meaning manufacturing chips for other companies. However, even with these steps, Intel continues to face supply chain delays and difficulties in meeting global demand. Today, Intel is no longer the undisputed leader it was in the 90s and 2000s. Its position is threatened by AMD in processors, by Nvidia in AI, and by TSMC in manufacturing. However, it remains a key player. Its Core and Xeon processors still dominate much of the PC and server market, and its bet on new hybrid architectures and its own graphics cards shows they're not ready to give up just yet. The case of Intel is quite curious. It went from being the absolute symbol of computing power to becoming a veteran struggling to stay relevant in a world that changed faster than they expected. Their recent history is that of a giant that, after decades of dominance, faces the harsh reality that innovation never stops, and that even the biggest can stumble. Intel CPUs aren't bad. In fact, they will likely maintain a relevant position for a long time. But if they don't strive for a real change, their end might be set in stone, condemned to be the processors that nobody uses anymore.